From Software is a developer that is known for making extremely hard video games. Now, throughout the vast catalog of all of their releases, we have seen some crazy intricate boss designs that have made us throw controllers at our wall, let's be completely honest. That's why today I'm going to be counting down the top 10 most difficult bosses From Software has presented us with. At the number 10 spot, bro, I have the Blood-Starved Beast. Now look, I could suck at Souls games, however, the Blood-Starved Beast gave me the most trouble out of any boss in Bloodborne, okay? And I definitely think that is for two reasons. One of them being, you are very limited on resources when you come across this dude in the game. If it's your first playthrough, you're not going to be able to unlock the Echo farming spot that's super OP because you have to go through him, and you are super limited on heals and bullets to parry him, and parrying him here is absolutely crucial in my opinion. That was the only way I found I could do damage to him, bro. Like, I had to parry him. And another thing that makes this boss fight difficult is the poison that he releases in his second phase. Like, basically, if you spend too much time close to him, he will fill up your poison bar and you will start taking poison damage, and the only way to get rid of it is popping an antidote, which just gives you another thing to micromanage during this fight, and it's pretty difficult for an early game boss. At the number 9 spot, bro, I have Pontiff Sulyvahn. Now, this may be another weird pick to some of you guys watching, but as somebody who's beaten all these Souls games, I'm here to say that this was one of the bosses that gave me the hardest time, and this was honestly one of the hardest bosses in Dark Souls 3 in my opinion. His first phase is honestly way harder than his second phase, which is kind of weird, but his first phase is just actually insane because he has so many attacks that just combo you and you can get stun locked so easily, and he's just rapidly attacking you the whole time, bro. Like, there's barely any openings. If you're somebody like me that likes to just roll around and get hits in when they can, like, this boss fight is pretty much impossible. Now, his biggest weakness is parrying, and if you can figure out the parry timing in Dark Souls 3, it's pretty easy. However, I don't have that much experience with parrying, and the only parrying I've done in a Souls game is Bloodborne, so when I had to go in this and actually learn how to parry with the shield, it was a pretty big learning curve for me, and that's what makes this boss come in at number 9 for me, bro, because I feel like a lot of people relate to that, and he gave me the hardest time in Dark Souls 3. At the number 8 spot, bro, we have another Dark Souls 3 boss, which I feel like a lot of you guys are going to agree with. We have Lorien the Elder Prince, or the Two Princes, whatever you want to call it. I definitely think Pontiff Sulyvahn was harder for me personally, but Lorien also gave me a difficult time, okay? And another reason for that is he's just super fast, bro. He just has so many rapid attacks all over the place. His first phase is pretty easy to master. I actually learned how to no-hit him in his first phase. But once you get to that second phase, bro, and the other prince gets on his back, bro, oh my dude, there's so many attacks coming at you left and right, bro. You have spells following you, he teleports on you. It's pretty annoying, and I had a hard time with this boss, and I feel like a lot of you guys also relate. There is a ton of cheese with him, and I honestly would put him higher on this list. However, there are a lot of cheese glitches you can do to get past him. I didn't cheese him personally, so that's why I think made him harder for me, but yeah, he comes in at the number 8 spot. At the number 7 spot, I have the Guardian Ape in Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. I actually had a pretty fun time with this boss, and the boss fight is super fun in my opinion. However, I do think that he would be easier if he was in a Souls game, okay? If you put this dude in like Dark Souls 3 or something, I think it would be pretty light work. However, Sekiro has a lot of unique mechanics, and like the whole game is basically different from all the other Souls games combat wise, and I think that's what makes this fight stand out in difficulty, because it feels like you're pretty limited on things you can do here. You can block and you can swipe your sword, and that's about it, right? So I think that this boss would be easier if it was in a Souls game. However, it's in Sekiro, and Sekiro has a unique combat that is different from the ones in the Souls game, so I think that's why it deserves a spot on this list. The number 6 spot, I have Godfrey from Elden Ring, and no, not the first ghost version of Godfrey. I have the real version of Godfrey, and honestly, this boss fight is pretty tame for the first phase. I didn't really struggle with it too much, but dude, the second phase is crazy, and it's absolutely insane. During my first playthrough, this caught me completely off guard, and he's just crazy, bro. It's like you're fighting the Hulk in a Souls game. It's absolutely insane, and it's a lot of fun. This is one of my favorite boss fights from Elden Ring, but it's definitely one of the most difficult, and in my opinion, it's top 10 most difficult in all of Souls games. At the number 5 spot, I have Manus, the Father of the Abyss from Dark Souls 1. This is the final boss in Dark Souls 1, and this is one of those boss fights that I think would be easier if it was adapted to a more modern Souls title. Dark Souls 1 is obviously FromSoftware's earlier releases, and don't get me wrong, it's a great game, it's so fun, but there are a lot of quality of life changes that aren't here, you know, because it's an earlier game. An example of that is you can't heal while you are moving. You have to stand completely still to pop an Estus flask, and I mean, dude, that's really obnoxious to me, because I went back and played this after playing some modern Souls games, and I was having a tough time on this boss, bro, because you can't move while healing. That was the biggest thing for me. And you know, when fighting these big giant bosses, I really rely on that mechanic alone, just because it allows me to maneuver where I need to, you know, and it just helps out. It's something small that helps out, and it's missing in Dark Souls 1, and I think that alone makes it really difficult to fight this boss. At the number 4 spot, bro, I have Ludwig from Bloodborne, and this dude, okay, this is one of my favorite boss fights of all time, first of all, but this boss fight is extremely difficult. The amount of one-shot attacks this dude has is absolutely insane. However, it is a learnable fight, and once you learn it, it is actually really satisfying, and this is one of my favorite boss fights in all of Souls history. But it's a hard boss, like, and I like it for that reason, and I just think his design is really cool, but he's definitely one of the most difficult bosses in Souls, and he comes in at number 4. At the number 3 spot, bro, I have Radagon and the Elden Beast. This is probably a hot take that a lot of you guys may or may not agree with, who knows. Basically, this boss fight gave me a excruciating time. This is one of the few bosses I spent multiple days on, just for the simple fact that you're basically fighting 2 extremely hard bosses in the span of one boss fight, meaning that you know, are limited to your flasks, and you know, you have limited resources because you beat Radagon, who's a pretty difficult boss fight in and of himself, and then you go on to the Elden Beast, and you know, you're like down to 0 flasks, or you know, you're down to a few, and you got to learn that fight now and basically be flawless because you're limited on resources. That is what I found to be super hard about this boss fight personally. At the number 2 spot, bro, we have another Elden Ring boss, Maliketh the Black Blade. His first phase is honestly whatever, but then you get hit with the coldest cutscene in Souls history, and then this dude turns into one of the most menacing bosses that you will ever play against in any Souls game, bro. His attacks are so sporadic, you have to worry about his withering ability he's got going on there, and you know, he's just so hard to find an attack opening on. He's just always, you know, bouncing around the map, jumping around the map, jumping behind you, and it's just crazy, bro. Like, you have to micromanage so much of his AI movements here, and I don't know, man. He's a difficult boss, and I think he's the second most hard boss in Souls history. At the number 1 spot, I'm sure many of you guys saw this coming, we have Malenia, Blade of Miquella, bro. This boss fight is absolutely wild, okay? I mean, even the developers FromSoftware themselves came out and said that this is probably the hardest boss that they have ever made. And I mean, dude, this boss fight is just insane. Like, if you're going here with no summons and no magic or anything like that, I mean, it's just crazy. Like, her combos are absolutely nuts. She heals herself, she stun locks you, like, it's just, it's wild, bro. Like, this is literally the craziest boss fight in Souls history. Can't tell me I'm wrong here. I mean, I'm sure many of you guys will agree, and honestly, beating Malenia is probably one of the most satisfying things in Souls, bro. Okay, like, this boss is crazy, and it's so fun to actually, you know, overcome and beat her. Comment down below if you guys agree with my list, and make sure to drop a sub for content like this being released weekly. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.